Welcome to another Rolled in Reacts episode. This customer had done their own DIY repair on their trailer hitch, but had failed a recent safety inspection and came in to have it repaired. Customer states, had a flat, but fixed it himself, wants to know roughly how many more miles he could drive before needing to fix it again. And this car was just in to get an oil change when the situation got a bit heated for the mechanic. And the owner of this car said that he didn't like the original color of it and that taking it to a professional auto painter was way too expensive, and figured that he had good enough ventilation in one of his barns and already had some paint lying around, so he just ended up doing it all by himself. The owner of this truck was on his way to pick up his wife from Zumba class when one of the front wheels just drove right past him on the highway. Turned out that the customer had another shop install ball joints in fairly new condition about 7 days prior. And the owner of this Lexus came in saying that they smell burnt wood whenever they drive on the highway. The owner of this car had it in for some regular maintenance and said that he's been thinking about selling it. When asked for how much, he said, "Oh, I could easily get 10 G's for it." The owner of this truck came in for one new ball joint, but he ended up needing two. Customer came in complaining about their car leaning heavily to one side after they did some suspension work on it by themselves. This customer came in for some brake work after they had bought this car for $8,300 because it apparently was a one-of-a-kind barn find. More like a one-of-a-kind piece of shit. The owner of this car came in saying that it had started to handle like Jack Sparrow at 4:41 a.m. trying to make his way home from the local pub. The owner of this truck had just renovated his engine together with his best friend, but hadn't installed one of the connecting rods properly, which led to some major engine damage. And this is apparently what a brand new clutch looks like when ordering from certain online shops these days. This car came in for its first oil change in 48,000 miles. This is the definition of a horrible car owner, someone that never cleans their car and drives it around without any shame, looking all beat up. Customer states, rattling sound coming from the engine. Wait, what? This fleet car is operated by a company that does frequent inspections on construction sites to maintain workplace safety. But they had been so caught up inspecting other workplaces that they hadn't noticed they'd been driving around with a car full of concrete for about 8 months. Customer states, slight steering wheel vibration at highway speeds. Customer states, occasional starting issues accompanied by a strange smell. Please advise. This utility truck came in for some suspension work after the customer had hit a giant dried pumpkin that had fallen out of a garbage truck in front of him on the road. This customer came in because they've started hearing a knocking sound, and it apparently also gets worse every time they go to top off the washer fluid. This customer rolled in with a power steering leak and some electrical issues after they accidentally drove through someone's private property the night before. This truck was in because the customer said that one of their rear doors wouldn't stay shut and wanted the technician to have a look. The owner of this Toyota Land Cruiser said that he did some work on the suspension by himself, but that he had started having a clunking sound ever since. The mechanic found the tie rods to be hanging on for dear life, only secured with a single tie wrap on each side. And if you work a lot on cars, you know that 10 mils have a tendency to fall into black holes and show up again in random, unexpected places, such as behind a wheel well liner. And this car had a bit of a leak. When this car rolled into the shop, it had quite the leak. The mechanic discovered the brake lines like this and eventually got the customer to confess what actually happened. Apparently, he'd been trying to win a bet with his buddies that if he could down 20 beers and still renovate the brakes, he'd get $500. Customer came in saying that something just flew by their car as they were driving on the highway. Turned out to be the speed limit sign. This car was in for some electrical work when the mechanics couldn't help but notice the state of the wheels and tires. And in some magical way, this car managed to get into the shop right on time. The owner of this Golf rolled in because he could barely get it into any gear anymore. He also said that he normally parks it on the hillside street right outside his apartment. This customer had changed his own wheel bearings, rotors, and calipers, but only got about 3 blocks down the street when this happened. This car had been on a pretty muddy and bumpy road and had to come in for some suspension work. Customer states, son borrowed the truck for a couple weeks, but now it has a whirring sound. The mechanic found that the torque tube needed a bit of work. This Ford F-150 rolled in because it had a loud engine knock, even though the owner had constantly been topping the engine up with engine oil, but still couldn't for the life of him figure out what was causing it. Customer came in saying, the damn kid next door thinks he's Tiger Woods, always has to practice whenever I'm working on the car. And this car came in with quite the dented rim after the customer said that she raced another car for a parking spot and won, but ended up slamming into a curbside on the way. And this car came in because the owner said, quote, brakes sound like a choir of cats sitting on a flaming hot grill rack. And this car was in for some new seats after it had apparently been sitting in a goat barn for a few months, when a couple of goats had gotten into the car and snacked on the interior. Mechanic states, I messed up and I want to go home. And I also want to take out my vacation days while I'm at it. Please? And this car came in with a pretty big leak. This customer came in with their Toyota Starlet saying it had started handling like a drunk monkey trying to get up a tree. And this customer was complaining about a loud sound whenever he would put something on the truck bed, even though he had just repaired it himself. Customer states, I am a self-taught electrician. Please help. The owner of this car came in because they had a terrible clunk anytime they hit the brakes. Turns out that the customer had another shop install new calipers and pads 2 weeks prior, but they had used tie wraps to secure the caliper instead of the proper caliper bolts. This car was in after the owner said that it had started sounding like a redneck beer car ever since their grandfather had attempted to install a new exhaust system on it but had forgot to use his good glasses and ended up cutting things that he shouldn't have. Customer states, nephew installed a new battery and fuse box, but car has weird glitches ever since. This customer came in saying that their car has started to run really hot lately and asked the mechanics to have a look. And this customer wanted his car insurance company to install 2-way dash cams for him, but they refused, so he just ended up doing it himself. This customer was in for an oil change and said that his favorite movie is Fast and the Furious. The owner of this car had it in at a different shop to replace a couple of transmission gaskets, as it was leaking transmission fluid all over the place. Turns out that the other shop had a pretty rough way of working on cars. And if you ever wondered how some of the cars on here ever get to the shop in the first place, here's how. How you know that you're overdue on your radiator replacement. And this customer said that their engine temperature gauge only goes up to about 20% and the engine never reaches full temperature, and this is what the mechanics found. This car came in because the owner said he had a clunk and dunk sound when driving, after he had installed sportier suspension together with his friends a few months ago. And this car apparently makes its very own fresh orange juice. Customer states, recently had some differential work at another shop, but car now makes a whirring sound at all speeds. The owner of this minivan came in because they felt the van had started getting really bad gas mileage after they'd been on a road trip across the southwest. The mechanic found that the top of the fuel tank had cracked and that the van had been slowly leaking fuel all over the place. The owner of this Harley Davidson trike complained about the clutch feeling strange and wanted it looked at. And this car couldn't have come in any sooner for some timing chain and tensioner work. And when your transmission starts transmitting parts all over the place, it might be time to have it looked at. This customer was in for an oil change but never mentioned anything about the state of the tires. Customer states, is it normal that a battery starts smoking if you've installed a 22-inch subwoofer? This car was in because the customer had a clunking sound when pulling in and out of their driveway. And this poor car had seen one too many curbsides. This car apparently came with a built-in inspection window. This sedan was in because it barely stops anymore, after the customer said that they had let another shop refurbish their old brake rotors and calipers, but hadn't reinstalled the calipers properly, so the brakes had caught on fire. This customer came in after they hit a pothole that looked smaller than what it really was. And this Ford Escape came in with a fuel leak, after the owner had let his brother install a new fuel pump for him for cheap. This Cadillac Escalade rolled into the shop because it had a horrible grinding noise from the transmission. The mechanic found that someone had worked on the transmission and had strangely plugged one of the washer fluid hoses into the transmission, which had caused the transmission to get flooded with washer fluid every time the customer went to wash their windshield. And this customer came in saying that their truck sounds like an excited seal about to jump into icy water. And this customer came in saying that whenever they try to shift gears, their car sounds like it's having a bowl of extra crunchy, stone Fruity Loops. This car came in after the owner said they had a terrible clicking sound when turning and a steering wheel vibration at all speeds. The mechanic found the CV axle on its last legs. Customer states, had a dunking sound and their brother fixed it with some petroleum jelly, but now the sound is back. The owner of this car came in for an oil change and casually said that he doesn't believe in showering and that he hadn't had a shower since 2009. The owner of this truck came in saying that his window is screaming for some WD-40. The owner of this BMW came in saying that their brakes only work sometimes, after they had some work done at a different shop. Turns out that the other shop had used the wrong type of pads and rotors for this specific model. This car was in for some new brake rotors because the customer said they had a strange wobbly feel in the steering wheel. When the mechanics had it on the lift, they noticed that someone who previously worked on the car had tried adjusting the steering but had instead made the car pretty unsafe to drive. This car came in full of knock-knock jokes, and the customer said that her uncle does her oil changes for her for cheap every year. And this truck came in with a sway bar that really lives up to its name. And when you try to do your own wiring work while being all wired up yourself, you end up with some questionable results. Customer came in complaining about their air vents sounding like a Spitfire airplane. The owner of this car came in saying, "My car feels slower than normal and I keep hearing these water sounds whenever I turn." Customer states, "My rearview mirror only works sometimes." And this customer had done the yearly service on his Ferguson tractor all by himself, but had to call in a mobile mechanic because he couldn't figure out why the tractor now had starting issues. Turned out that he had the air filter the wrong way. The owner of this car had fixed a broken exhaust all by themselves using some silicone, but had to come in because the fix wasn't fixing. Uh-oh. This customer's car had made its very own bologna stew in the expansion tank. The owner of this truck was in because he said that he keeps having to switch car batteries every couple of weeks and had no clue what to do. The mechanic found out that someone had helped him replace the serpentine and generator belts not long ago, but had forgotten something. And this customer hit the kind of jackpot you don't want to hit. Customer states, "Car started sounding like a tractor overnight. Please check and advise." And this customer said that he can't tell how fast he's driving. And the owner of this car had fixed an oil leak with an epoxy. The customer came in saying that he wants a new air filter in his Porsche Panamera. The mechanic went, "Okay." Customerstates asked for a wheel alignment and also to remove the unidentified object hanging from his tow hitch. Customerstates, I'm pretty sure I bought a Ford pickup and not a John Deere tractor. A quick welding job later and the tractor sounded like a pickup again. And the owner of this Lamborghini had done his own oil change on it but ended up overfilling it by 35 quarts. The mechanic said that the customer doesn't even deserve to own a Fiat, tops a bicycle. The owner of this car came in saying, "Yeah, I had a vibration from the back for a while, but I fixed it myself." This pickup truck rolled in because the owner had trouble starting it even after he tried tapping the battery connectors gently. This Lambo owner came in because of a starting issue after they had tried to install a new sound system in it that they apparently got off Team U. And this customer had installed a new CV axle at another shop 3 weeks prior, but had come in because they've had a weird sound ever since. The owner of this car came in because the high beams and blinkers were constantly turned on, after the owner's friend had tried installing a new blinker stock for them, which they got off AliExpress. This car came in after the owner suddenly lost all power on the highway 5 days after their friend had tuned the engine for them in his mom's garage. And this car came in with a transmission noise right around the holiday season, and the mechanic found the transmission fluid to be all decked out and ready for Santa. Customer states, "Can't unlock or lock my car, please help." This customer came in with their car after they had, quote, "pimped it out for the bush," and just wanted the mechanic to have a look at it to make sure it all looked solid before heading out on a little adventure. And this customer came in with a clunking sound after he had done some suspension work on his car. Turns out that he had forgotten to reinstall the bolts on the strut tower. And this truck was in for some new brake pads when the mechanic discovered this. Customer complained about a strange, strong smell, especially during idle, and wanted it looked at. Turned out that someone had recently adjusted the valves for the customer, but damaged part of the valve cover in the process, so oil had been leaking onto the outside of the engine, which was the cause of the issue. And this car was in for an oil change when the mechanic noticed the state of the undercarriage and that the customer had installed their very own underglow kit. This car came in because of a clunking sound after the owner's wife had hit a curb going 40 miles an hour. Looks good? And this car was in because the gearbox was on its last legs, after the customer had failed to notice they had a slight transmission fluid leak. The owner of this car had started getting a clunk when going over bumps, so he just fixed it himself using some footballs. And this is what happens when you install the wrong sized oil plug. This clutch came in desperately asking for the mechanics to replace it with a new one. Customer states, car has started sounding like the intro to an 80s rock song. If you know which one it is, drop it in the comments down below. This customer came in saying that they were speeding to get to work on time when they suddenly heard a loud pop and the engine started sounding strange. Turns out that the customer needed a new expansion tank. This truck rolled in looking like this, after the customer had tried installing a new wheel bearing on it by himself. This customer said that his favorite music video is California Love by Tupac, and wanted a daily driver that reminded him of it. This car came in because it ran rough after the customer had been in 10 days prior to get a new timing belt installed, but had declined getting new tensioners because they were apparently in pretty okay condition. This car came in needing some suspension work after the owner had used it to go camping with his new girlfriend over the summer. Customer states, I married the wrong woman and said that I wanted a divorce. Please advise. And whoever worked on this car does definitely not deserve to own a car in the first place. The owner of this car came in because his braking power still hadn't improved much, even after he replaced brake calipers and pads by himself. Apparently, he had forgotten to install new discs. And if you thought that slicks are only used on racetracks, you'd be surprised at how much they're actually being used in regular traffic. This customer's car rolled in because it idled really badly, and this is what the mechanic found. Customer states, parking brake sounds like a choir of AI ducks. Please advise. And this Mustang had hood pins installed in a pretty questionable way. And when your oil changes start looking like they're sponsored by Starbucks, best believe you're overdue for maintenance. Customer states, strange noise whenever I go over bumps. Please advise. Here's a video of another shop caught in action while working on a customer's car. This Lexus RX rolled in for its first oil change since 2009. Apparently, the customer thought that the car ran fine, and so she didn't bother with any maintenance other than filling it up with gas and washer fluid. And the owner of this Jeep came in saying she just wanted the mechanic to check her tire pressure because it apparently felt like the car was leaning to one side when driving. And this vehicle was in after another shop had done a pretty bad wiring job underneath it, which had left the customer with a number of electrical issues. And this customer came in with their Seat for an oil change, but the mechanics flat out refused to work on it because of the awful smell coming from the interior. The owner of this Chevy Cruze came in complaining about a burning smell and the car feeling sluggish after they recently replaced a valve cover gasket in a pretty interesting way together with their father-in-law. This customer was in because they needed quite a lot of brake work. Customer came in saying that his friend had told him that he could tune his car for him and easily squeeze an extra 100 horsepower out of it, but the only thing he ended up doing was putting the car on the back of a tow truck. This truck came in for an oil change when the mechanic discovered that the rear subframe was pretty unique. Looks great! And in case you ever wonder what the heck Venom oil really is, here you go. The owner of this car rolled in on a tow truck because the car didn't want to start anymore. The engine turned out to be hydrolocked, and the customer also said that they had driven through a large section of water on a smaller road, but thought that the car could handle it. Customer came in saying that they hit a badger on their way to their friend's house, and ever since, their truck had started leaning heavily to the right. The owner of this car came in with it looking like this after they had hit a lion-shaped concrete roadblock while trying a new shortcut on their way to work. This car definitely doesn't need to eat more oats for breakfast. Customer states, borrowed the car to a friend who needed to tow something up a steep hill. We're not friends anymore. Customer states, was out trolling with my boat when the engine suddenly started to sound really weird. Could you check and see what it is? Customer states, accidentally drove over a sign because it said op on it. Customer states, does all regular maintenance by the book and does it himself, complains about high gas mileage and wants us to diagnose the problem. The mechanic drained the car of oil and noticed it hadn't been replaced in a long time, and this is how the oil pan looked like. And this guy had hit a hole in the road that he thought was just a shallow puddle of water. This customer came in saying that he hit what looked like a giant pack of Oreos while on his way to work. This customer came in for an oil change, but the mechanic had some trouble getting into the car because of the one-of-a-kind lock system that the customer had invented himself. And this car had more than just one owner. Customer states, engine runs bad, wants a thorough inspection. The mechanics drained the car of oil and discovered it was also full of coolant and transmission fluid. Upon further inspection, they noticed that there was a giant bird-shaped hole in the radiator and transmission cooler, as well as a bad head gasket, which had ended up causing the perfect storm. Luckily, the customer's insurance company covered all the repair costs. And this customer complained about his cab not really getting warm in the winter. Customer states, needed new wipers, but I fixed it myself. The owner of this Toyota came in because he keeps hearing a dunking sound when he hits the gas, after he had replaced some gaskets on the differentials not too long ago. This car came in after the owner complained about a wobbly steering wheel after they had done a tire rotation at another shop. This truck was in because the four-wheel drive had stopped working. The customer said that he had filled the differentials up with O'Keeffe's hand lotion because that was the only lubricant he had on hand when doing some maintenance work on the diffs and had later forgot to replace it with gear oil. This car came in with some brake issues after the customer had parked the car on the street for a few days while they were out of town. This truck came in for an oil change when the mechanic noticed the professional bodywork that the customer had done by themselves. The owner of this car came in because he had installed a new sound system in his car and said that he wasn't great with electronics, so he called in his father-in-law, who gladly helped him out, but now he needed a new battery. And this car came in with quite the transmission leak after the customer had tried using the transmission as a jacking point to do some work on the subframe. This customer came in after they said that they constantly have to top up the oil and wanted the mechanic to have a look. The mechanic found the leak and the customer ended up confessing to having changed the valve cover gasket by themselves a few months ago. Customer states, my antenna needs a blue pill. This vehicle was in because it had some major engine damage, and this is how the pistons looked like once the mechanic started working on it. This car came in because the customer said their turbo had started sounding like. This customer came in with their Ford SUV because it had failed an emissions test after the customer had done some work on the exhaust system by themselves. And this car was apparently invaded by jackrabbits while it was parked outside on a ranch in Texas for 5.5 months. And this customer came in saying that his Mercedes has literally started limping. Customer came in with their Volkswagen saying, but a little rocking is normal, right? It's a diesel after all. Cozy. Ah, Mr. Sparkley, we meet again. This garage had just taken in a new intern and this was apparently his first shift. This vehicle came in because it had a couple broken fuel injectors. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like and subscribe for more. Thank you for watching, and until next time.